I mean, congratulations.
Only in America.
Oh, well, you know, it's so much better than a magazine interview, because I realized I was talking, I could actually stop trying to hopelessly describe it, and actually, you could hear it. The thing, I mean, okay, it's got Zeppelin, and it's got Portishead, and it's got Timbuktu, and it's got all of those elements seamlessly woven together. But the other thing is, right at the heart of it is it almost turns into, for 1 minute, what is the soul of a man? It almost goes back to the blues roots of it, and what's always there, it was always present in your work, no matter how many tangents go out on it, it always seems to go back to that blues core. And I'd like to talk, well, let me shut up for a moment. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about what got you into it and what keeps you going back to that source.
I don't know, I think maybe, and we all in this room have had a moment where music suddenly became the absolute only thing in your imagination and your mind. And for me as a kid, you know, I lived in England, and the whole radio setup, the whole exposure to music was really very muted. The post-war Britain was a very dour and very sort of understated and a place where there wasn't a lot of dynamism. And as a kid, didn't know what was going on, you know. I was hanging out. I once wrote a song called White, Clean and Neat about hanging onto my mom's skirts and just being in the warmth of my mother's care and attention, but having no idea of what was going on. And then I heard Elvis. And, you know, I was about 9 or something like that, and this voice came across in amongst Pat Boone and Johnny Mathis and all the stuff that was part of the Valium that we still know about today. Elvis came straight through, and he had the Blue Note. He was listening to Sleepy John Estes. He was listening to guy did That's All Right, Mama. Thank you. Yeah, I get like that now. And he got all this stuff. Mystery Train, Junior Parker's Blue Flames. I didn't know anything about the references. I didn't know anything about what I know now, where it came from. But I heard that voice. And no matter how his image has been maligned and how it ended up, when I met Elvis with Led Zeppelin one evening in LA...
Oh, that alone, hold it, let's pause for a minute. Let's just drink that in for a second.
Hey, we could do this all around the country, you know.
Ed McMahon here.
Yeah, well, Elvis wanted to know who was this. He'd adopted a kid when he was in the forces in Germany in 1959, some sort of pen pal extremity thing, whatever it was. And this kid was a bit younger than the king himself, and was into Zeppelin. And we were involved with some people around that time who were booking out Elvis too. And Elvis wanted to know who was this bunch of guys who was selling tickets quicker than him. And so they said, it's Led Zeppelin. And we went to see him 2 or 3 times. And a couple of times he made mistakes. And I remember that night at the Forum, he was doing something like Reconsider Baby or whatever it was, the Lowell Fulson song. Yeah. And he stopped it and he said, wait a minute, we've got Led Zeppelin in here tonight, we've got to get this right. And I went, I mean, so I mopped the tears away, and we got the nod that we were going to meet him afterwards. And we went to the hotel, and they had the entire top floor. No motorbikes or snakes. They just had these trestle tables with a couple of big guys. And they ushered us to a suite down the hall. It was a tacky place. It was great. It was all purples and browns, and, you know.
He carried that with him, I believe.
Yeah. Well, there's nothing wrong with that. The room was filling up with sort of second-hand Anne Margarets. Yeah. There was a lot of...
well, you know, it has to be said, a second-hand Anne Margaret is
nothing
still...
wrong with that, I can tell you. And I was looking at Stella Stevens over the other side of the room and salivating. It was a fantastic build-up. And the hall, at the end of this huge suite, which was almost as big as this room, a door kept opening and somebody kept popping their head around, just waiting for the temperature of the room and enough cosmetic to join the atmosphere, so that it was getting a bit sort of feral. And then the door opened and this guy came through the door, and my heart jumped. It was like, whoa, look at the way he moves. And I mean, he was just going around chairs like... He was so cool. And I mean, of course, he wasn't supposed to be cool, but he was, you know, a bit like us, I suppose. It's like and he came over to us, and we stood in a circle for about 2 or 3 hours talking, and people kept coming by from his retinue, from his entourage, thinking that he'd had enough. He was going, no. We had a great conversation. And our manager, Led Zeppelin manager Peter Grant, is sort of quite well known as, probably as much as John Paul Jones, you know, big guy, a very great presence about him, and Peter was just going past us on the way to taking a seat somewhere in the homage area.
Yeah. the second circle.
That's right, yeah. And he lost his footing a bit like our friend there, and he 350 pounds of joy ended up on Vernon Presley's lap on it. And Elvis's dad was really frail, with a white safari top. And we talked with Presley for about three hours. It just went on, and we were talking about the root, and your question about where did it come from? It came from him, and he still got it. He still was into that whole Delta thing. He, you know, Good Rockin' Tonight, all that stuff that got him going in the first place. But he also knew, and he had a great sense of humor, and he knew that he was locked in this self-parody. I mean, when the songs dried up, when Lieber and Stoller and Pomus and Schumann, when that kind of whole era of creative writing started to wane and things changed, I didn't want to hear Elvis doing a Neil Diamond song.
Right.
I wanted him, I mean, it was bad enough him coming out of the army and doing Are You Lonesome Tonight, you know. I wanted him to stay wild, to give me all those edges, that kind of, that howl that he had. But, you know, he was just amazing and spectacular, and it was just that he really opened the door to my whole love of music. And because of him, and because of the choice of his material, I found that Smiley Lewis, you know, I found all those great singers, and now all these box sets that come out, some of the stuff that he did in the 60s, and was quite so well crafted.
Yeah.
Hank Garland's guitar playing, the stuff at RCA in Nashville, I mean, the recording of it, and his humor in the middle of it all is great. So it was a dream come true to meet him, but it was also just by chance that I heard him, and it affected me the way it did. And from Elvis straight through to the Tuareg guys in Timbuktu, it's a straight line.
Yeah.
It curves a bit, but the blue note is there all the way through my life. It's just calling to me.
Well, you know, and I think that's the thing, that the more time that goes by, the easier it is for people to get confused about how important Elvis's moment was, because, you know, because there's always the feeling that, well, they're not giving enough credit to Chuck Berry and Bo Diddley and Little Richard and so on, which is true.
Right.
But Elvis rearranged the mainstream. If Elvis hadn't taken it from How Much Is That Doggy in the Window and turned it into, this is mainstream popular music, then Little Richard and Chuck Berry and Jerry Lee Lewis would not have had the opportunity to get through it all.
Sure, and he was also white, which was
That's right.
crucial, because that gave him the foot in the door that maybe Alan Freed was trying to do with Chuck and Bo and all that sort of stuff. But he was, and he was a great-looking guy, and he actually, that physical representation, by the time he got to England, guys were like hitting themselves on the head. Bang, what's going on? Who's this human being? It was fantastic in the middle of all that crap. You know, there was one shining star, and then of course you get exposed to, I mean, Bo Diddley, the man, and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I was just, as you say, in the dark with my radio.
So